Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only, Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, and I am here with our new co-host, Michelle Claire. Michelle, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, I am wonderful. I'm so excited to be here tonight.
Well, I'm thrilled to be partnering with you in the show, and of course, we're still waiting for PK to feel better and rejoin us on our efforts to educate and entertain everybody with the paranormal. And as everybody knows, PK has been facing some health issues. She is at home, but she's still recovering. But anyways, it's been a long road for her. But Michelle, I'm thrilled that you're here. Now, for everybody who has heard you on our show before, they already know that you are a great psychic medium. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but when I first started the show, my first co-host was a psychic medium. So here we are again, and it's just thrilling to have you here on the show. Thank you so much.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you. I am so excited to join it and be in this amazing world and connecting with so many amazing people.
Well, we certainly have amazing people that join us on the show. We've got some great guests tonight, two exciting guys, two ghost hunters will be joining us shortly. But first, I wanted to give you an opportunity to please share your upcoming events with everybody. So go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So if you are in the Phoenix, Arizona area, February 6th, I will be in person up in Scottsdale. We'll be doing readings and some sound and energy healings with the gong baths and the crystal bowls and all of that. February 12th, I will be in Tempe, also doing in-person readings. And then on the 28th, I have an online gallery reading. And you can find tickets to all of these through my website, MichelleClare.net.
Great. Well, I wish I was out there. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yes, come out
I
here.
certainly wish I was out there now because,
weather.
let me tell you what it is here. I mean, I just can't tell you how much I would hate to leave. The 7 degrees is what it is right now. 7.
Oh.
Single digits. No, I would love to be there.
I'm sorry.
Believe me.
Yes, we had a sunny 69 degrees today, so it was perfect.
God, it's a heat wave. Oh, my God. Well, I promise I'm going to get out there sometime. And I also wanted to tell everybody, my goodness, we've got some great stuff on our Facebook page. Make sure you go there, give us a like and follow, and also Twitter. But here's the thing I wanted to share with everybody. Just before I came down to the theater room to start the show, I came across a post from our friend Uri Geller, who's been on the show. And Uri Geller, for anybody who doesn't know who he is, he's a spoon bender. It's one of the things that he used to do in Israel. And he also worked for the Mossad. He is a quite amazing psychic, and he is telekinetic. He has many, many abilities. Anyways, this really caught my eye, and I just want to read you his post. He said, "My dear friends, a team mapping radio waves in the universe has discovered something unusual." Now, I read about that somewhere else, but he's qualifying it a bit differently. This unusual radio wave releases a giant burst of energy 3 times an hour, and it's unlike anything astronomers have ever seen before. No doubt in my mind that this is connected to alien intelligence way, way superior to ours. start deciphering their messages. They are preparing us for a mass landing soon. Wow, huh?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a little crazy to imagine that.
Well, as I was saying before we went live, it's why not? Let's have aliens in 2022. That's all we're missing at this point.
We
anyways,
might as well. And the thing
why not?
They could be very friendly and very helpful. It doesn't mean this would be a bad thing.
I know. I'm hoping it won't be a bad thing. We've really had it with the bad things, we really have. And also, you work with the angelic realm, and you were going to get a message for our audience tonight. So what did they tell you?
Yeah, so the energy that was coming in from the angels this evening was for each of us to start embracing the present moment. So for the last couple of years, we have all been worrying about the future, especially COVID jobs, what's coming up, who's sick, who's not, on and on and on and on. And the energy right now is embrace the present moment. They've said to say that our power for our future and our power in controlling our emotions, it's right here, right now. So it's really easy to run away with all the worry and all the bad things that could happen or all the great things that could happen. But where we have the ability to create and manifest our future is right here in this present moment. So when we find ourselves worrying, pull that energy back in and remind yourself that for most of us right here in the present moment, we are good. We really are. So they came through with a lot of love and confidence. I do think we're going to see a lot of changes this year, but I really don't want to say that I think they're all bad, especially since you're talking about aliens invading. It might be a great thing. I don't know.
Yeah, it might be. Well, that's good advice, always to be in the present moment. Not the easiest thing to do, but it's something to aspire towards, I'd say. That would be good if we could all at least try it out. But thank you for that message, Michelle. That's a good one. So as everybody knows, tonight we have celebrities with us. We have the stars, of A&E Ghost Hunters. We have Brandon Alvis and Mustafa Gatollari with us. And we're going to be talking about some really fascinating things with them, their new technology, their classification system of how they actually have found some way to use scientific method with ghost hunting and give it more integrity. They are also very committed to telling the truth about what they're finding. So not faking anything, which is great news because we're all tired of the phony stuff. We want the real deal, and that's what these guys are doing. They have a brand new book out. It is called Elements of a Haunting. You can get it on Amazon, and this really is a great book. I read it. It's phenomenal. Everybody who's interested in ghost hunting should go out and get it. It is wonderful. Now, also, they're involved in a television production. I know it's kind of top secret, but they'll tell us as much as they can about it. And we got a lot of questions for these guys, so let's get started. So let's see. Here we have them. Yep, Mustafa has joined us. Brandon and Mustafa, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Very
You're
exciting.
so
I have
welcome.
to say, first, that intro you guys have is awesome. I love the music. I love the voiceover. It was phenomenal. You got me so excited for the show.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. That's been with us for just about ever, so I'm glad it's still good. It's still working. So now you guys have had very interesting early lives that basically hooked you into this whole field of ghost hunting. Now, Brandon, for you, you were touched by death several times in your life early on. And Mustafa, you were living in a haunted house. So whoever wants to go first, tell us a little bit about what led you into being a ghost hunter.
Brandon, I'll give it up to you, Home Skillet.
So, my journey into the paranormal started at a young age. In 1995, at the age of 8 years old, I lost my oldest brother to cancer. And in 2004, I lost a brother to suicide. So that kind of sent me on my journey into the paranormal, into the, thinking about the possibility of an existence of a life after death. So it was never really about having a personal experience or experiencing paranormal phenomena per se. It was more about having to learn about death and cope with that at such a young age. And I, got into the idea of the possibility of life after death, and does consciousness survive death? And that's really what got me started.
Yeah, that's. I can imagine that must have been pretty traumatic. Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty traumatic. Those two losses. Wasn't there another loss also, a grandparent or someone who passed away?
Yeah, my grandmother. Yeah, she passed away in 2001, and she passed away at the age of 74, and it was a lot to take in. It was a lot of loss at a young age for me, and having to almost virtually grow up in a graveyard, if you will, because my mother, losing a son, I can imagine what that would be like in that grieving process. Would take me with her every day to visit his gravesite and mourn his death. And so I was around, the cemetery for a good part of my life. And so just being around that and seeing other funerals take place and seeing how other people dealt with the grieving process was something that, again, sent me on this path and looking for answers, and something I continue to do to this day.
Brandon, did you ever feel the presence of any of your loved ones after they transitioned?
I haven't. I don't believe I haven't. Mm-hmm. I can't say that 100%, but I have had multiple encounters over the past 16, 17 years where I've had people with psychic abilities approach me that have no idea about my past, no idea about my history, that have brought up my brother specifically, which is, I don't believe in coincidences, and there's no way that those people could possibly know that information. And so I guess you could say, I have had, a sense of their presence through those encounters and through having various psychics over the years approach me about that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, because I think that is part of what probably set you on this journey, was you were feeling like you weren't able to feel them, or you weren't connecting with them. Is that right? And so you're like, okay, is there more?
Right, absolutely. It's that larger conversation. One thing that, everyone in life and everyone in humanity has different ideologies. They have different religions. They have different thought processes. But death is one thing that unites us all, and that's one thing that we are all going to meet, is that ultimate end. And I think that, just thinking about that larger question, what happens when we die, that's something that, fuels a fire inside of me, and something that continues my research.
I love that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's great. So, Mustafa, what brought you to this field of research?
A lot of anger, as weird as that sounds, a lot of anger at the super. Yeah. Like any great love story, you know what I mean? You got pissed off because somebody almost hit you with a car, and then it's like, oh my God. No, I wish it was that quaint. My parents came from a really, really superstitious background. So when we were experiencing paranormal, or what seemed to be paranormal activity in our home that we moved into, was like empty for a few years, classic horror movie setup. We go and we move into this place, and, the first night there was like some weird sugar honey iced tea going down. And throughout the years, every kind of misfortune that befell my family, my parents were constantly attributing it to this, like, we're Muslims, so we grew up like anything bad was a jinn. Albanian Muslims would see jinn. That's the word that they would say. So it's like, it's a jinn, it's a jinn, it's a jinn. And I was just like, throughout the years, I was just so sick and tired of them blaming every bad thing on a jinn, more so my father than, my mom, because I'm just like, you're just making stupid decisions. It's like a jinn's not taking money out of your bank account. It's like you have like a 7th grade education from like Albania, and you're investing in the stock market when you've been like a laborer your whole life. That's why we don't have money. Like, that's, I thought it was really practical reasons as to why, like, we were experiencing such misfortune growing up. So I kind of set out to learn more about jinn, which kind of, when I started reading more about jinn, and I started reading about like different, like, supernatural phenomenon, a lot of the stuff that was happening in my home, it seemed like it was more related to reports that people had of ghosts and hauntings. So that kind of that piqued my interest into researching that more and more. And then somewhere along the line, I read a line in a book where it had said, I forgot the name of it, but I was just a library nerd, where it was, you want to research the history of the home, and you want to look into the history of the home. And like every classic ghost story is like, oh, you got to find out what happened there. So I'm just like, all right, well, that kind of piqued my curiosity, and I started looking into the history of the house that we grew up in. And sure enough, I started talking to people in the neighborhood, and I found out there was someone who died on the property, and was somebody who had committed suicide. And then a lot of the stories and a lot of the things that my brother would tell me about the man he was talking to in the garage, who as a child he said, oh, this man's tying shoelaces around his neck. That kind of really piqued, my interest, and I was like, oh, okay. So the more I delved into the house and its history, and from all accounts, what people were telling me about this man, a lot of the activity that occurred in the home seemed to really make sense, and make sense in that it just left me with more questions. So that's what kind of started my whole paranormal journey. I just became obsessed with the idea of hauntings and ghosts, and more so how to help people in terms of reconciling their present with hauntings. So I had family members, friends, they all kind of turned to me as the resident holy man who deals with ghosts. And, I just wanted them to help them lead better lives, just get them out of the same vicious cycle of blaming all their problems on some unseen force. And 99% of the time it was, someone's just drinking too much, or, their house is just uneven on the floors, or, they have some wonky cabinets or whatever. But then every so often I'd come across something that I really just couldn't explain. And, I got some friends together, and we, didn't know what the hell we were doing. And then we kind of got a little better at it. And, as the years went on, it was just a very, very, it was a huge learning process. And, and then I met Brandon while, on the set of Ghosthunters, when they flew us out to California, flew me out. And, I met him there, and then that just kind of lit an even bigger fire under my butt. And I've been just doubling and tripling down in paranormal research ever since.
So this is your full-time job now?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I still write. I was, I think that's another reason why Brandon and I kind of get along so well, is we're both horrible insomniacs. We don't really sleep much, and we're constantly working a lot. And my parents are immigrants, and so I still have that kind of immigrant grind. I just work all the time. But yeah, paranormal. We wrote the book together, even right after we finished filming season 2 of A&E's Ghosthunters. We got right to work on the book. We started drafting up ideas for other different shows and programs. We're constantly delving into research. I mean, I talk to Brandon more than I talk to my own wife. We talk to each other all the time, constantly, because we're dude, what about this? What about this theory? What about that? Oh, what about this article? It's holy shit, we're going back and forth all the time. And it's great because we have this shared passion, and we're always constantly pushing each other. So it's more than a full-time job, but I still do. I write for distractify.com. And so I'm a busy bee.
Yeah. And Brandon, how about you? Is this full-time for you too?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we're constantly working on something. The book, we were actually, one of the good things that came out of the pandemic and the lockdown is that we had time to sit down and write the entire book and the entirety of it and get that done. But yeah, we're, always researching and working on new show ideas and programs, and just trying to step out of the shadow of pseudoscience within this field, and really taking it to that next step, and hoping to be taken seriously by the public and the scientific community. So it's a lot of work, but it's something I very much enjoy and have a passion for.
That's great. And are you familiar with Bob Bigelow's latest research outlay, where he's asked people to provide him with proof? And he's offered, I think it's $1 million prize or something like that.
I have heard that. Yeah, it's very similar to James Randi with proving psychic ability. I have heard that. Yes.
Except Bob is not a skeptic, so that's the good part of all of this. He's truly looking for proof and also something that can be repeated. That's the hard part with this, isn't it? It's very difficult to repeat phenomena.
It is, but it's all about the methodology, your standards, your ethics, and your set of protocols. And once we get that down to an exact science, being able to repeat the phenomena will be far more easy. And, one thing that Mustafa and I have done really well is the fact that we implement, very sensitive pieces of equipment from various technical industries. We're not utilizing devices specifically made to find ghosts, to entertain within the paranormal space. We use devices and equipment that are used in other industries that can give us factual data and empirical evidence, and that's something that we have done for a number of years now, and something we continue to do. And to go further with that, we started to implement what is referred to as an EMCCD camera, an electron multiplying camera. This camera is typically used by the digital imaging scientific community to record single photon events. And the reason we started using that is because I went to one of my scientific consultants and I asked them, if ghosts are real and there are, manifestations of what we believe to be ghost entities, whatever you want to call them, what are the, how would that possibly happen? What are the mechanics behind that? And the theory of photons and photon events were thrown out at me. And photon events are lights that are typically not seen by the human eye, that are all throughout the universe here on Earth as well. And we implemented this very sensitive scientific piece of equipment in multiple locations and started to record photon events in the exact locations where eyewitnesses were claiming to see entities and spirits. And not only have we, furthered that theory of what we call the paranormal photon theory, but we've also started to establish a correlation between these photon events taking place in these haunted locations with barometric pressure changes. So that's one thing we've done is, setting a very specific data set, a parameter set, where we're trying to collect these very specific environmental conditions associated with haunted places to say, hey, look, this is data, this is what's happening naturally in a location, but this is what's happening when what we perceive to be paranormal phenomena is manifesting. So that's something we've been working on and something that we'll continue to work on here this year.
That's great. Now, are you familiar with the research that the Rhine Institute is doing on photons right now?
I have heard a bit about it. I haven't read too much on it, but I have heard about it.
Yeah, you may want to stay in touch with them because one of our guests, Ed Edwards, he's been on a bunch of times on our show. He can actually generate millions of photons just on his own. They've measured him over and over again, and this is something they were able to replicate. And he was able to affect a weather pattern. When he was on coast to coast, there was a big hurricane that came in from somewhere, and George Nuri asked him if he could have an effect on it. And he actually brought the wind speed down. It was amazing. I mean, his mind was blown, and so was everybody's. But that's Ed. I mean, Ed's a good old country boy, and yet he has this incredible ability to generate millions and millions of photons. So you're onto something with these photons, that is for sure. It's a big piece.
I love
that.
A
big missing piece.
I believe so, and I would love to connect with this gentleman. That'd be fantastic. That's something that Mustafa and I would love that.
Definitely. I'll make sure you have his contact information. And it's something I think that may lead you further down this rabbit hole of photons. It would be fun to see what could happen from this. So I think the Monroe Institute also studied Ed. And so anyways, he's of great interest. And I know he's been to a few institutes where they've looked into what he can do. And it's pretty amazing. So I'm also very impressed with your list of technology in your book. It's very substantial. So what's your favorite? What's your favorite piece of tech here? You've got so many great things.
Oh, it's tough. I mean, with any investigation, we want to collect as much data as possible, like I was speaking about before. So, they all work in conjunction with each other. But, I'd have to say, at the end of the day, the EMCCD camera is very special, and being able to record these single photon events in various locations. I mean, obviously we're not getting them at every location we go to, but when we did A&E's Ghost Hunters, there was 3 places in particular where we were able to capture the same type of phenomena, almost repeat it in these locations. And again, that correlated perfectly with the change in barometric pressure as well. So, I would have to say the EMCCD camera is definitely high on that list. And I have to say, the EDI Plus, the data logger, is a fantastic device. I call it the Swiss Army knife of the paranormal because it has so many functionalities. You're recording everything from temperature to pressure to humidity to EMF to vibration, all in one device. Great sensor technology in that device, and it gives a lot of data and factual data. That's not just a REM pod that's, emitting its own EM field that can be easily contaminated by other devices within the investigation. These, the sensors within that device provide a lot of information, and especially when you provide that information on a time code and you're aware of what the natural environmental conditions are of a location, when you start to see changes within that and phenomena starts to take place, that's when things start to get really interesting. So I'd have to say, the EMCCD camera and the EDI Plus are definitely up there.
Yeah, they sound great. What about the FLIR thermal imaging camera? How do you use that?
We use that for, multiple purposes. A lot of the time it's mainly used to, kind of look at a structure to see if there's any flaws within a structure, any type of water leaks, any type of damage to buildings. It's very good for that purpose. But every once in a while, we do find anomalous type of phenomena with it. It could be a heat signature. It can be a cold signature. It varies. But for the most part, we do use that device to kind of, survey a structure and to see if there's any flaws within the location. And it's more of, a tool to aid us in understanding what the building's like, because obviously we can't see into the wall in some of these places, but that device will give us very clear understanding of if there's any damage to a structure, if there's anything happening there that could very easily be explained as something that what some would, portray to be paranormal, but at the end of the day is something that's a completely natural occurrence.
Now, you've got a list here in your book of about 10, 12 different pieces of equipment that you use. And here's a question from someone in the audience. They want to know, how much does it cost to get outfitted with all of these things to do ghost hunting?
Well, there's different ways to go about it. There's devices out there that you can purchase that are more affordable, that can provide you some great results and great information and data. But, the stuff that we use typically in the field is usually loaned to us by other, professionals from technical industries. We have great consultants, amazing people that are, in the scientific community, some in the medical community, engineers, people like that are very much interested in paranormal phenomena. They don't actively go out and investigate it, but, sometimes they do go with us, but they provide such great consultation when it comes to equipment, as well as an understanding of how the equipment works and also what's natural in some of these locations. So the stuff we use is on the higher end because that's loaned to us by some of these different institutions and people within those institutions. But you can buy devices out there like digital audio recorders. Technology has advanced at such a rapid rate where you can buy really great digital audio recorders that give a lot of information, high bit rates, a lot of data within the recording for $100. Even if you're looking for EMF fields or you're looking for a change in EMF, you can use something as simple as a compass. That works perfectly, and you can buy those very cheap. So it really depends on, what you're trying to do and what, your mindset is within the investigation.
Yeah, you could even purchase something as cheap as like a barometer. They have Amazon sells this really great electronic barometer, because pressure changes is a big thing. Everybody talks about that heavy feeling before, or when they go into a room or something. And, EDIs or EDI pluses, I think they run $200, $220. And if you're, just want to check pressure in an area, you have an inkling that that's something you want to test, you don't have to go and spend $220 on an EDI Plus. Get yourself a barometer. See if there's any sharp decreases or increases in barometric pressure with one of those, and you could get a decent one that's pretty well insulated for $15 to $20.
Oh, that's good. Okay, that doesn't have to break the bank. Now, when you are recording and using your digital audio recorders, and I see you have different types of microphones that you can use also, tell us about some of the EVPs you've been able to capture.
Yeah, we've captured some phenomenal stuff over the years. And again, anything that we collect that we believe to be unexplainable, we always take that to a third party, mainly an audio engineer, that takes that recording and puts it through a spectrum analysis. And that breaks down these recordings frequency by frequency. And what that does is it can show us what a contaminated frequency from a radio frequency, cell phone frequency. There's so many frequencies in the air at any given moment around us at all times that some of these devices can be contaminated with those frequencies. But we've captured some direct, clear responses that seem to sound like human speech and human in nature that are, again, very intelligent to the situation, that have showed up outside of the contaminated frequency levels and shows up almost in a range of human speech, but doesn't quite look like our voices on these recordings. It's been phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard some EVPs. Some of them are crystal clear, and some of them, I don't know what they're saying. But what were some of the best ones that you guys came across?
I would say one that we mentioned in the book, that's my personal favorite, is when Brandon and we were in this little old town called Pampa in Texas, and we were at a location called the Worley Hospital. And we had done tons of research before going into there, and there was one story that stood out to us. And it was a story about this nurse by the name of Mary Lucille Myers. And we go into this investigation. First night we're there, Brandon and I are investigating the first floor, and Brandon thinks that he sees something pass by in the hallway while we're investigating, and on his body camera we caught what appeared to be an apparition. Now this hospital has been out of commission at that point by like 35 years. There's Brandon, I think at that time we're investigating, right, and there was no power to the building or anything like that. We did EMF sweeps, we did all of that. So the second night we're there and investigating, we have other members of the team. The theory was, if we're going to be drumming up new construction, that sometimes that amps up activity and what have you. So we have other members of our team downstairs with the sledgehammers, just, reenacting an AC/DC music video on the first floor, and the bop, bop, bop hitting the walls. And then Brandon and I are up on the second floor, and while we're walking through the second floor, out of the corner of my eye to my left, I could swear that I saw an apparition. Now I had never seen an apparition or like a shadow figure. Like I've seen other stuff. I've seen things move on their own and stuff like that in investigations, but I've never seen a person who wasn't there. So my immediate reaction is to be like, oh, you're an idiot. You're just kind of seeing, but I'm like, yeah, let me go in the room. So we go in and we immediately start getting EMF spikes. And then we start to invite this entity to interact with our EDI Plus, and it does. And we start asking questions. Are you a man? Nothing. Are you a woman? We get something. Are you a man? Nothing. Again, we ask, are you a woman? Boom. Are you a woman again? Boom. So we keep asking all these control questions back and forth, and we start our line of questioning with a very wide net, and we narrow it down till we get to the point where it's like, okay, did you work in this hospital? Yes. Were you a doctor? Nothing. Were you a custodian worker? Nothing. Were you a surgical nurse? Boom. And that's what Mary Lucille Myers was. So we still have a lot of more back and forth with the devices. And then the responses start triggering on our motion detector. Now, Brandon has these very simple motion detectors. Very simple. You stand in front of it, the light's on. You move back, the light turns off. So again, we're asking questions, and it seems like every time the answer's in the affirmative, there's nothing in front of this motion detector, but something keeps setting it off. So then it stays on for a while. And then Brandon and I, we ask, we're like, hey, do you mind, can you step away from the light? So then step away from the device. And then the light starts to dim, which is like remarkable. And then again, we continue asking questions back and forth for another like 15 minutes, and it seems like we're dealing with an intelligent entity. So that's all very, very cool, super dramatic. I mean, I could talk about the story and it'll take an hour, but I'm just giving you the clip notes here.
Yeah.
But when
That's exciting.
at the end of the night, at the end of the investigation, end of the night, you know, we all go back to our respective rooms in the hotel. We're reviewing, you know, all the footage that we captured and all that. I get a call from Brandon, and it's like 4 a.m. or something. He's like, dude, you got to come check this out. And anytime Brandon's called, every time Brandon calls me, it's always good news. And I was just like, hell yes. I go and I run straight to his room. I'm like, dude, what's up? He gives me the headphones. I put them on. And at the part when we ask, like, hey, can you step away from the device, you hear a woman's voice go, oh, okay. Oh, sorry.
Wow.
Sorry. She goes, oh, sorry. Steps away from it. And
wow.
It's the same, and it was so distinct. And on that floor, it's just me, Brandon, and the cameraman. That's it. That's just the three of us. Now, I can't explain that. You know, I don't know what it is, but with all of the intelligent interactions that we were having, it was so crazy to have that, like, corroborated by it. So that was, like, probably my favorite EVP we ever got.
So let me ask you a question. Now, when you asked the entity, the woman, to step away from the device, and she answered you, you didn't hear her at that time, right? You only heard it when you played back the recording?
Yeah.
That is so interesting.
We didn't hear it with our ears.
Photography too, usually.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You don't see it in the moment.
Because the same thing can happen. You don't see it with your eye, but the camera picks it up. And the same thing with a recorder. You don't hear it with your ear, but the recorder picks it up. I find that so interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there's been tons of instances of that. I mean, visually, I mean, Brandon, what you captured on the SS Queen Mary, I mean, you have that photo that you captured, and then the video of the little girl in there. I mean, that's freaking insane.
Right. What was so unique about that instance at Worthy Hospital that Mustafa was talking about is the fact that we had multiple devices correlating within that session. So not only did we have these EMF spikes that we were getting, direct answers through, but then that communication seemed to move to the motion detector, which was very interesting. And we were having yes or no questions answered through the motion detector. But at that time, we had no idea that there were, vocalizations or answers audibly, well, technically not audibly, but, digitally through the recordings that were happening at the exact same time. And that's something that's so important with our research, is having that correlation between these different devices. So not only are we seeing a change in the environment with, EMF spikes, the EMF levels in that building, which had no power, by the way, is changing in that moment. Then you have a motion detector that's, there to detect motion. We're physically not seeing anything down that hallway. We have cameras pointing down that hallway. There's no reason for that motion detector to be, turning on and off the way it was. And we're having answers directly through that. And then lo and behold, we have these Class A EVPs that come through of a woman that directly correlate with the changes in the environment through EMF, with the motion detector being manipulated. It was a phenomenal thing. It was, one of the, it's one of those instances that make you, look at paranormal research from a different lens and through a different light, right? Where you start to understand that it's not all gimmicks and tricks. There's actually something going on here, and there's a conversation that's taking place that, very well could have been Mary Lucille Myers, which it was responding in that way, and it seemed to be her. Mm-hmm. And this woman that had such a tragic story and such a tragic end seems to be, still there in some capacity. It's really phenomenal stuff.
Yeah, and I just want to talk about this just a few more seconds, but like what was really, really great about that, what I loved most about that is the instant, obviously you're going to get excited whenever you capture anything that could be potentially paranormal, but like Brandon was just saying, that kind of set the precedent for us to like challenge ourselves even more on every single investigation that we went on, like, okay, let's get multiple devices. Let's see if we can get it corroborated in a bunch of different ways. We got something audio, cool. Let's see if we can get visual attached to it. Let's see if we can get environmental conditions changing or any aberrations that we can, have at the same time, going off at the same time. So then we can start piecing these together and then see, like, okay, are all of these things connected? So then on an investigation like the Galena Marine Hospital, Brandon brilliantly sets up the EDI Plus in front of the EMCCD camera. We see this blue shimmer that we saw with our own eyes in the middle of our investigation while we were like on a break of filming in the building. We run in there, don't know where the hell this blue light came from. It shows up on the EMCCD camera as like this shimmer, and then right before the shimmering like starts happening, before it kind of like, I'm going to use the like lamest word ever, but crescendos. That's the only thing that's coming to my mind, where it like hits its zenith of like all of its like blue splendor. Start getting changes on the EDI Plus at the same time. So that's really cool, because what does that tell us? Okay, there's a light anomaly occurring at the same time as a pressure change. So the correlation between potential paranormal activity or these photon events with pressure is something that we've established on multiple occasions now. Did it in Alaska. We did it in Galena. I'm pretty sure if we had the EMCCD camera, or I'd like to think like at the Athenaeum, Brandon, when we were there, maybe we would have caught something there if we did that. So that's why we're so excited. Like now it's like, oh, we have all of these little bits of data. So it's like, okay, let's up the ante. Let's challenge ourselves even more. Now we can take this out of the realm of pseudoscience. Now we can start piecing this puzzle together a little bit, because right now it's just a mess. You got a bunch of people with a bunch of flawed devices kind of going around hoping to capture something. But like, how can we make this more cohesive? How can we string that together? That's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, well, that's a great goal, because there is so much fraud out there, and it makes it difficult for people who are just wanting to get the truth out there. So it's important to have that level of integrity that obviously both of you have. Good for you. And it's also a challenge, because when you go to do a television show, time is money, and they want something to happen. So the temptation is there to try to make it seem like something happened when it didn't, just because the camera's rolling, money's being spent, you got to wrap this show up. It's tough to reconcile those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, Brandon, you go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, that's the unfortunate state that we're in right now with paranormal entertainment. That's what I'll call it, because that's what it is, because it's not factual research in any way, shape, or form. It just isn't. And you have these para-celebrities, I guess you would call them, or I like to call them the paranormal elite, because that's how they think of themselves in some way, that they are out there saying what they're capturing and their theories and their belief system is gospel, and no one should question it. And it's a really sad state, to see with, some of these people on these shows that have just become the character they have developed for themselves for these TV shows, and they've just become this enigma within themselves where what they say is 100% true, and people better take it that way, or they're not taken seriously. It's very unfortunate, and that's something that we're looking to correct. And we are in full transparency and honesty. If we don't get anything, that's equally as entertaining, because there's a process behind that. We always say science is scary, sensationalism is not, because that process of the unknown, of testing the unknown, is not only entertaining, but it can be pretty frightening at times, because we don't know what we're getting ourselves into. We don't know what the results are going to be. It can be very uncomfortable at times. But, it's about the process. It's about being truthful and being honest, and we just currently do not have that in the current slate of paranormal entertainment.
Yeah, that's right. Because I know we used to hear rumors a long time ago when Ghosthunters was first started that things were being faked, and it was a turnoff to a lot of people, because people do watch it for entertainment and all these paranormal shows. At the same time, they don't want to feel like they're being made fools of by, people that are just trying to make it look like something happened. And it doesn't help anybody. I mean, the same thing happens with people who try to fake UFO stuff. It just muddies the waters for everybody. It's very unfortunate, but it's great that you guys are taking this in a new direction and really trying to get this to be accepted as a scientific method, that you've actually identified these, what you say, class 1, class 2. It's very interesting the way you broke it down. It's like in class 1, I saw that you put in emotional attachments, gray ladies, innocence, ghosts. And I wanted to ask you, what are the gray ladies? Talk to us about that.
That's a very interesting phenomenon that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. And, you know, we use this specific set of terminology based off of case logs going back hundreds of years with the London Ghost Club and some of these literary giants and people you never would have guessed were involved in the paranormal field. And people like Charles Dickens, people like that. You know, there's always been an interest in, you know, what happens after death by some of the most brilliant people that have walked this earth, from Sir Isaac Newton, Nikola Tesla. There's so many people, but the terminology that we use to put together this classification system are different types of activity, entities, ghosts, hauntings, whatever you want to call it, that go back hundreds of years. And specifically with gray ladies, it's a phenomenon that was identified first in Europe by different researchers out there with the London Ghost Club that went to these old castles, some of these old manors, and they were seeing, they had eyewitness testimony and also seeing what looked like a woman that was completely in gray, and it was always associated with the history of a woman that was murdered for the sake of love. And it happened time and time again with all these different locations throughout Europe. And that's something that actually came to fruition for us on Ghost Hunters when we investigated the Athenaeum in Indianapolis, right, Mustafa?
Yeah, that was like at the start of where we began to see these shifts, not shifts, but these weird occurrences with pressure. I mean, you have this really tragic tale of this woman, Dr. Helene Kanabe, where we write about it in our book, and we worked with someone who researched her life. She published a book on it called She Sleeps Well. Excellent read. And this story of this woman who was a trailblazer in every regard, German immigrant, came to Indianapolis, was one of the only I think the first female doctor who graduated from med school, was like one of the brightest minds in the area at the time. Loved this place, and you know, she was murdered, but her murderers basically got away free.
Yeah, because didn't they identify her as a suicide or something when it was ridiculous? There's no way it could have been a suicide.
Utterly ridiculous. No, I mean, it was a very deliberate cut. The way her throat was slit is like, you're not going to be able to do that yourself. It was very clear from the coroner's report. And then the community loved her so much that people actually pooled together their money in order to hire a private investigator to go and basically get justice for her. And then, like, after they couldn't afford it anymore, he was so horrified by the case that he decided to keep working it anyway. And they basically got it ruled that her death wasn't a suicide, but, you know, the people who were responsible, they didn't go to jail or anything like that. But, so we went there, and we were at the Athenaeum, and we just noticed that's when we first started realizing that there was intelligent responses on the EDI+, and there were sharp precipitations and pressure whenever we brought up anything that was pertinent to Dr. Helene Kanabe's life. Anytime we asked her about the Athenaeum and the work that she did there, that would go up. We'd ask control questions, things that had nothing to do with it, nothing. We'd bring up Dr. Kanabe again, pressure changes. So that was a really, really interesting case for us, and that just opened up a whole new world of possibilities for our research.
Yeah, I really like how you have broken this out into different categories. I'm a sociologist by training, and this makes a lot of sense, what you did. So it would be nice if other people who are into ghost hunting could follow this. It would, I think it would help, because you could build your cases based on these different categories, and it would make a lot more sense. So I know, Michelle, you had a question about time rifts, right?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. First of all, I was wondering, do you ever have physical responses in these situations? Do you ever get nauseous, or you feel hot, or you have cold sweats, or are you having physical responses in these interactions too?
It's a very rare occurrence. Yeah, it's very rare, but it has happened. Personally, for me, when we were at Madison Seminary in Ohio, it was one of the first times I ever encountered what almost, the only way I can explain it was the sensation of something physically going through me. And not only did I feel that, almost like a sense of, it started out as a cold wind and then almost like an energy going through my body, and it made me physically ill to the point where I kind of doubled over and I felt like I was about to vomit. And so it's a rare occurrence, but that's something that personally happened to me at the Madison Seminary. And I know Mustafa had something, to me that was, pretty scary. I don't know how Mustafa takes it, but at the Glen House in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, that was a pretty intense situation in the dining area.
Yeah, we were in the dining area, and the Glen House, I always try to, I'll do like, whenever we go on a case, the way you approach an investigation is very similar to the way I see it is you're meeting people for the first time, presumably, right? Because these are the entities that we are theoretically trying to interact with. So, my parents kind of like raised me to not be like disrespectful when I walked into somebody's house, so I got a lot of beatings for that. So I'm always very like traumatized into like in a good direction. It's hey, listen, there's abuse in the right direction, and I don't fault them for it at all. I mean, I'd be a mannerless monster if it wasn't for that. But like, I always want to make sure that like before I go into an investigation, it's like I want to let the headline from this is like Mustafa from Ghosthunters like condones child abuse. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. But we're every time before we go into a case, it's like what do I connect with? What don't I connect with? And if I don't connect with something, how can I, or at least at the very least, address the fact that, listen, I can't sympathize with this or I can't connect with this, but this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And I try to vocalize that and carry that with me emotionally. And it's the same thing when you're like talking with somebody, you're going on a date or you're at a job interview. People can always tell when you're trying to like BS them. They might not know exactly what it is, but if somebody really knows where you're coming from, you can feel that off of somebody. You can feel that energy. So the story of the Glen House is something that was very, very, kind of personal to me, because the Glen family, they had this great home and they loved it, and then they lost it. And my family, we lost our house growing up, and it was like a really, really traumatic experience for me. Yada yada. Okay, I play the violin, but it was very like, it's something that still bothers me to this day. And it's just like, even before I signed and got like my house, I was like, oh God, like I hope this doesn't happen. Like, and it's like nightmares in my head. But when I was out there, in order to get a response, I got probably the most aggressive I ever got in an investigation, was I told it was presumed that these members of the family were there because every time one of their ancestors visited, there would be activity and it would ramp up. So I basically said, and I felt a little guilty while I was saying it in the dining room area. I says, okay, you have to understand, like, this isn't your home anymore. It belongs to Christy. Christy was the director of the Glen House Museum at the time. And I was like, so, it belongs to her now. This isn't yours. You can't just go around and, walk around like you own the place and scare people. Right after I say that, I feel something that felt akin to like an electrical burn or like maybe like a jellyfish sting on my right arm. Oh. And my immediate reaction was to laugh, because I was like, oh my God, every time I'd watch like a paranormal show and someone's like, oh, I just got scratched, I'd always be like, this guy's full of freaking baloney. Like, you know what I mean? I would curse more about it, but I don't know what the policy is on this. But like, I'm just like, this is like such hack fraud nonsense. But I have heard instances of people getting scratched. And again, I didn't want to bring it up. And then I wish they kind of showed the whole thing on the show, but like I go to Brandon and I'm like sheepishly going up to him. I'm like, hey man, I think I was scratched, dude. He's like, what? He goes and he shines his light. And sure enough, I have these like claw marks on my, like scratch marks on my arm. And what's even more is that, like, went back to the hotel, looked in the mirror, and I had it all down my back as well. And I hadn't had, I didn't have any fun nights out, to that extent while we were out in Missouri. So like that wasn't from that. But it was pretty cool. Like, you know, we had that bonds, and it was right near a letter that was addressed to the Glenn family from their descendant, who was alive and visited it. And she's an author too. And she gave us a lot of wonderful, you know, resources for the book. So yeah, it was just a very, very interesting experience. The one I never thought I'd ever feel. But yeah, physical stuff can happen. But I do think, I mean, I've been on hundreds of investigations, and it's very, very rare for me anyway.
Right. So that leads me to my next question. So these ghosts that you're encountering, there's like a time rift. Are they seeing where they are as it was when they were alive? Are they seeing it as it is today? Like, how does that work for them?
That's a great question. That's something we're trying to figure out ourselves. I think that both could be a possibility. I think it could be different, you know, per location, per this type of haunting. I think it can happen. You know, we look into interdimensional phenomena. We look into all kinds of different things. We look into quantum theory, to quantum physics, quantum mechanics, quantum consciousness, all kinds of things. You know, we're very open to any possibility, especially in the scientific realm, in the scientific community. So for us to say exactly what's happening, we're not quite sure, but we do know that there is something happening that is, you know, above normal, paranormal, that is taking place in various locations throughout the world, and that it does seem to be there's some kind of consciousness there. So I think that there can be, you know, scenarios and situations where they are seeing in their time period, they are seeing it as it was, and I think that there are, you know, different scenarios where they're seeing the building as is in our space and time. But there's so many different theories and so many different ways we can go about it. You know, we're just not quite sure of it yet.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, from my experience as a psychic medium, I think it's both. I think that it's very individual, and I think sometimes when I'm connecting, they are seeing it the way that it was, and sometimes they're seeing it as it is today. So it's probably very individual.
That makes perfect sense.
I mean, and I think it's also worth mentioning. We touch on it briefly in the book, but whenever you're studying, like if you look at anybody who studies like theory of like time, right? Time, we perceive it as a linear line, but time is anything but linear. Any type of study of time almost always mentions two recurring phenomena that comes up in our research all the time, and that's pressure and light. When light forms, the beginning of its life cycle is the same as the end of its life cycle. So if you start thinking about how black holes operate and how time operates by completely different rules in a black hole. Black holes thrive on pressure. That's how they are formed, and that's how they grow larger and they suck things in. And the last thing to live inside of a black hole, the last thing to die out is light. So I don't know what the hell that means or how to even like wrap that into paranormal theory, but when pressure changes and light anomalies constantly come up in our research, could it be that what we're experiencing is just like a peering into a window of time in our investigations, and that's the voices that we're getting, and we're able to communicate with somebody, or somebody's coming in? Maybe. I know that Brandon's investigated a lot of locations that have really deep, rich familial histories. So this is a very emotionally charged area. These are people who are